Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am visiting with Lisa Hawthorne today, who is the CEO of Willow Valley, the largest, I think, CCRC in all of the United States. This will be a great conversation. We met and had a chance to visit a little bit at Senior Living 100 in San Diego a couple of months ago, but first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Lisa, welcome to Foresight TV. I'm going to tell a little story as we're getting ready. We hadn't necessarily communicated, and she was really worried about her background, which compared to mine is beautiful. And I don't know if they've ever talked about why I don't use a background and why I let you see the office of the mess of my office. The reason is because that's who I am. That's kind of how I live my life. And I just, I'd rather have you not think I've got, because if we ever got together, you're going to say, oh, that guy looked like he had a really neat life. And no, he's a mess. And because I am a mess. Lisa, I know you're not, you are otherwise. That's why you're the CEO of Willow Valley and I'm not. Let's start with where do we shoot? I'll let you pick. I'd love to have kind of just hear your story of how you got to where you're at, and I'd love to have you talk a little bit about Willow Valley. I actually know quite a bit. I stayed there once and visited, and it was lovely. So your turn.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having me, Steve. And you can see a little bit of it, but I am a messy desk person. And for those people who are neat desk people, I have a little visual that I found years and years ago, and I wish I had it handy had I known we were going to start off like this. It says something about the benefits of a disorderly desk is that one is constantly making exciting discoveries. So I have piles you can't see here, but I'm happy to be here and excited. I've been at Willow Valley now just over a year, and that time has flown by very quickly. I've been in the business probably for 30 years now, if we're counting, and got my start in senior living working for a developer and really was functioning in the marketing capacity at that point. And so this developer developed and operated not-for-profit life plan communities for retired military officers. So a pretty niche part of the space there, and went on to spend the majority of my career in the consulting space, which is what gave me such a broad view to what other organizations were doing all around the country, facing any number of challenges you might expect from startup developments to expansions and repositionings and turnarounds and everything in between. So it's been an exciting journey for me, and finally got to begin my work on the provider side after being so many years on the other side. And really gained a new appreciation and understanding for what the provider side is experiencing. And so this opportunity with Willow Valley was just an absolute dream come true. And it's exciting to be able to bring the different experience that I have from around the country, and also to learn from the amazing work that has been done here before me. And then together to take that into the future where, we are serving very different consumers. So it's an exciting time to be at Willow Valley.
Terrific. So let's talk a little bit about Willow Valley. Why do people love living there? How big is it? And sort of what's your secret sauce?
Well, I'm going to give you just some estimates so I don't get any of the actual details wrong. But somewhere around 1,700 independent living residences across 225 acres. We're technically two campuses here that are about a mile apart from one another. We think of it as a single community, but there are multiple campuses. And then several hundred beds of supportive living here in the personal care, long-term care, and short-term rehab. We also have a continuing care at home program, which is called Smart Life via Willow Valley, and that is serving north of 500 members who would prefer to age in place in their own homes. And we are happy to be able to enable that for them through the program. Let's see, what else can I tell you? What is the secret sauce? Well, they're just doling it out to me in a slow drip, right? So I have spent the last year listening and learning about that secret sauce. And having spent my career in the business, I was certainly aware of Willow Valley, but had not visited here, unlike you, until I actually went through the interview process. And so what I tell my industry friends and colleagues, I can explain it all to you, but you really have to see it to believe it, because it is so big, and it's really, really a beautiful place. And then I think the secret sauce really comes in beyond the beautiful brick and mortar, is the level of lifestyle and programming that our team puts together here is pretty incredible. And that's done obviously with input from the resident body. But I should have had some props handy. I could have shown you a few exhibits.
Yeah, well, that's all right. So one of the things, as you were talking and I'm thinking about this, is I'm trying to imagine. So you went through this interview process and they said, we want you. And then as you're getting ready to go, you're walking into this massive campus. You've got, sounds like close to 2,000 residents between independent living and the other levels of care, plus the home component, and you've got, of course, family members that are in there. So you sort of got maybe, I don't know, 3,000 people who sort of live under your leadership. So as you go into this, how did you decide what did you do the first days? What was that like? What do you do first? Where do you start?
So started with meeting people, and it really is a finer point on those numbers: 2,700 residents, 1,600 team members before you even get to the family. So it's very much like a small town here, and so it was really about meeting residents. And so there were lots of events for me to meet residents, and then meet them wherever they were. Right, so. Some people would reach out to me and I'd have coffee or I'd have lunch. Other people don't reach out at all. Some events were kind of receiving line type events, but really the best way to meet people is the walking around and just encountering people, as part of the normal day. So, and fortunately I have meetings in multiple places around here. So I'm always on my way to or from, which are the best possible opportunities to meet folks. And the sure way to guarantee that you'll be late for your next meeting.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. So what surprised you?
Wow, what surprised me? I think one of the things that surprised me is the things that I've experienced at other communities that happen at scale here because of the size. So an example, we know how important word of mouth is to marketing. And so when you're in a typical CCRC in a suburban market that maybe has 500 or 600 total residences or beds, you will have people who say, oh, my neighbor also moved in, or we all belong to this country club and we all moved in, or we all came from this church, this group of people. Here, it's been incredible to experience the people who have moved not from down the street or from the local country club community or local church community, but people who've moved from 2 or 3 states away. And one couple comes and reserves a residence, then they go back to their neighborhood and tell their friends in the cul-de-sac, and then they convince them all to move. And so you see that bring a friend happen at a multiple. And so that's pretty interesting and pretty cool. And then, of course, it's the actual generations, right? We have people living here who are north of 100 years old, and we have people here younger than I am, because we are 55 plus. And so that's 3, arguably 4 generations, depending. But there are also two, if not three literal generations, where the 102-year-old, her 80-year-old daughter lives here. And it's not because they live together, it's because her daughter also moved here. 4 siblings and their families who moved here. They didn't move in together, but they all moved here. So that was a really pleasant surprise.
So Lisa, I think you have just invented a new kind of senior living that somebody needs to build, because as I'm just over 70, and my biggest value would be to live out the rest of my lives with my kids right next door, right? So I'm thinking, well, I could do that at Willow Valley, except I couldn't, because none of my kids are 65 yet, and there are a passel full of kids, including a brand new baby, which wouldn't work very well. So maybe in your next life, you can create a campus that does all the senior living stuff, but also makes space to have younger families so that we can have those connections. I think you've invented something here marvelous.
Well, I think we're just going back in time then to creating communities that encourage and embrace multiple generations. So, we're 55 plus today, but who knows what will happen in the future.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, you've got a new project. You held this big, huge town hall that was standing room only. I assume that I'm going to make an assumption that maybe not all of those people were necessarily thrilled about it. And so I'd love to have you talk about the project, talk to me about the town hall, how you manage that and all of that.
Sure. So the project I inherited, along with several other large projects that we're undergoing here, and they're all super exciting. The project that you're referring to is the Mosaic Project, which is an independent living expansion, or a satellite campus would be another way to refer to that. It's about 4 miles north of here in downtown Lancaster City. And it has been on the drawing board for more than a decade. And COVID and other events sort of sidelined it here or there. And so it has long been, though, a commitment of the board to see this project through. And of course, conditions change over the years. Post-COVID, everything changed. Cost of construction, the interest rate environment, volatility around that, and supply chain issues, and all of the same headwinds that every organization who's trying to push forward a new development has experienced. And so I've inherited Mosaic, and we've been moving along for the past 12 months now, trying to get everything in order and communicate with residents. So to your point, there's some concern and potentially even I could call it opposition to a project of this sort. And this is pretty typical in most communities. Once I'm a resident, now I'm here, this is just fine. Why do we have to grow again? I'm going to have construction disruption, or there are going to be more people who are, impacting capacity at the gym or in the dining room, or fill in the blank. And so it's a pretty normal reaction for residents to have some anxiety over it. And so, what we've tried to do is simply share as much information as we can about the process and the timeline, knowing that there are things that have to happen behind the scenes as we continue to advance the plans. And so that was really what the town hall was about. And for many people, the concern is really financial, which is, right. It's a significant project, which is going to require a financing transaction where we are taking on more debt. And so there's really just the most important thing to do is just provide the education and, quite frankly, the perspective of our financial position relative to maybe the rest of the industry. We are one of just a handful of A-rated organizations. Yeah. And so I think it's important to just put that in context for people so that they understand that their contract being fulfilled by us is not in any way jeopardized by taking on a growth opportunity, which has, again, long been planned for and has been planned prudently. And we've carried it out deliberately and carefully, and with the help of lots of experts. So it's really about education.
How many units is it?
It's 146 units in a 20-story building.
Okay.
So
And do you anticipate people moving from your existing campus to that, or do you have that? Do they have that option?
they do have that option. And in fact, some of our depositors for the Mosaic project have already moved onto this campus with plans to relocate when Mosaic is available. Now, I say that recognizing that many people, once they get here and they get settled in and they establish their friend group, they may or may not want to move when the building becomes available in 2029. So, but they do have the option.
So, I'd like to talk a little bit more about just how you manage resident, I don't want to say demands, but resident requests. I mean, you've got you've got a ton of people. I mean, we've talked about the number of residents. You also have got a big bunch of employees who have their own set of needs that are not always the same, right? Mm-hmm. How do you manage these requests? I mean, I'm sure there are some that are easy to say yes to, some that are so dumb that it's easy to say no to. It's the ones that are in the middle. How do you deal with that?
That's right. Well, one of the things I'm working toward with the resident council is to expand their purview. So are there other ways, other committees or other advisory groups that we can put together so that we can harness the vast amount of expertise and knowledge and passion around probably any challenge that we have before us to solve, so that we can do that in a productive way. So that's one of the things we're working on right now, and I'm excited about that. And the other thing is finding ways to invite feedback and input on a more regular basis. So I don't think the old school, satisfaction survey is the way to go anymore. And so we're looking at how we're going to be able to incorporate immediate feedback from residents and a productive way to solicit ideas. And that today that comes through the resident council, which is appropriate because they are, as part of the governance structure, the liaison between the resident body and management. And so there's a pretty formal process around that. But I like the idea of having some informal that isn't quite anecdotal. I bumped into you in the hall and you've got an idea, but maybe a different kind of channel for us to invite some input, which is different from feedback.
Input is different than feedback. That's absolutely right. And I've got some ideas on it, but I'd love to have you just talk a little bit more about the difference between the two.
Well, our team and our board went into a strategy retreat in April. That was one of the things that I thought was important after being here almost a year. Let's all sit down and talk about where we're going next, and what the future looks like. And the board is responsible for a big piece of that conversation, right, as they set the vision and we're here to execute. But it was great to have everybody at the table and sort of acknowledge some of the challenges that we have and explore the possibilities. And then coalesce around what are we going to do with it now. And leading into that retreat, because we couldn't take everyone into the retreat, we did invite resident participation by way of the resident council, and we did have the leadership team plus another layer down of some emerging leaders to have some younger, fresher sets of eyes at the table with us. But we also launched a brief survey to both residents and the rest of the team leader population, which here is about nearly 200 leaders who were not able to be in the room with us. And so understandably, there was a mix of input and feedback, right? Because it was an opportunity for people to vent some frustration over some things that we know to be our challenges. So try to invite input, recognize you're going to get some feedback.
Yeah, and it's really hard, right? Because nothing's ever perfect. And what makes one person happy isn't going to make another person happy. And so that becomes a really, really difficult challenge. So besides this big construction project, maybe there are other construction projects. What are some of the other initiatives that you're working on?
So we do have a state-of-the-art, state-of-the-country memory center opening. Ribbon cutting is coming up in let's see, my goodness, 60 days, not even 60 days. So that's pretty exciting. And we could have an entire conversation about just the Memory Center, but that's a very exciting project. We've got another independent living expansion on this campus that is getting underway in the third quarter of this year. It's pretty small, but that will represent pretty much all the developable land that we have on our existing campuses. Yep. So we have to think about what does growth look like in the future. So one of the other bigger initiatives here will for 2027, and certainly is happening now, with as rapidly as technology is advancing and AI being adopted across the enterprise, really making sure our tech stack or our technology infrastructure backbone is where it needs to be for us to be able to move into the future. And so that means some back of the house technology evolution and some resident facing technology. So I was just at a presentation this morning to describe a new point of sale system that we're going to be implementing. So one of the great challenges when you have this many residents that span this many age groups is we're talking about multi-factor authentication. And, some people are pretty frustrated by that, or they don't even know anything about it. And then you've got other people who are used to logging onto their bank account and using MFA for that and any other digital thing that they interact with. So that's a real challenge, is technology for people who, we want to use QR codes in the dining room, but not everybody either has a smartphone or even brings their phone with them to dinner. So there are challenges that, we're balancing, given that the incoming resident is already, accustomed to a certain level of digital interaction to do the things that they do on a daily basis. So that's just technology infrastructure is a big one for us right now.
So I want to shift a little bit. We've been talking mostly about resident facing kinds of things. Love to talk just a little bit about staffing. I mean, 1,600 people is not a small number. How do you recruit? How do you retain? What are you doing in those areas?
Well, we're fortunate to have a pretty stable workforce. Like many organizations, we see turnover in the same places. It's in the clinical area, the CNAs, and it's in the dining, culinary services area, because, we have a lot of seasonal help there with students. And so we're fortunate to have a pretty stable workforce otherwise. One of the things I'm excited about is our Vice President of Human Resources is passionate about learning and development and creating career paths and trajectories for folks. And we are talking about a number of different kinds of internships. So being able to, everything from exposing high school kids to what the opportunities might be, to providing more meaningful, real hands-on practical internships for college kids who might be coming out trying to decide where they might want to specialize, and really helping people to understand in a way that I don't know that we've done a good job. And I know lots of great people who are out there doing it now, but really helping people understand that no matter what sort of career path you want to pursue, you can probably find it in this environment. If you work in finance, you can have a career in HR, in fitness and wellness, in the more clinical spaces. And so and even in strategy and areas, I think there's something for everybody in this environment. And I want us to expose more people to it so we can build a pipeline of talent.
So I'm going to actually come back. You sort of hinted at or told me a very brief story about, is it 4 different family members that I want to get to that in a minute. But so a couple of weeks ago, I was at church and I was approached by a couple that's my age, and they want to sit down and talk about CCRC's life plan communities, because one of their sisters is living in one in the South, and they went to visit and really fell in love with it as a lifestyle. And so, there's a question to me is, what do we look for? How do we figure this out? Big investment. People, of course, as you said, they worry about the financial stability, but you also have got to work in. But more than anything else, what I love is stories. And so I want you to tell me a little bit more about this family where all these people moved in together. I got so excited about doing it for my own that I didn't really explore it the way I should have.
Well, I'm looking around for the actual edition of the magazine so that I could give you the details, because they were featured in one of our recent additions. If I can step away for one moment, I might actually be able to find it.
Awesome. I would love that. So
pretty quickly. I've got a couple of them here on my desk, so I'm going to quickly flip through here. Hope this is the one.
now I actually, while you're looking, I'm going to just riff a little bit. I'm sure there are some people out there who are saying, I never want to live with my family. I want to be as far away from they can. They're in Florida. I want to be in Washington State or something. But I think this is it's a big issue. I mean, one of the things, I was talking to this couple that's looking at CCRCs, that was a big consideration for them, is how do they make sure they stay in touch with their kids and their grandkids. And as I look towards retirement, it's a big question that I have. Fortunately, I've got two of my kids who are in this area. One's away. I'm trying to figure out how to bribe them into moving down where I am. And then I've got all my grandkids close. I haven't figured that out yet. So anyway.
Well, and of course, I don't have the one issue. I've got 3 or 4 issues on my desk, but I don't see the one issue. But I can tell you, as an example, while it's not these four individuals, I think it's 2 brothers and 2 sisters.
Got it.
I did meet a couple in the elevator one day, not long after I got here, and I asked them, my typical question is, so how long have you lived here and where did you move from? And this particular couple had not been here very long, and they had moved from the San Francisco area. And I thought,
that's
wow,
a big move.
That's a big move. Do you have a connection here? So she had sort of some family connection back here, but had lived out on the West Coast with her husband for all that time. So I said, gosh, I'd really love to hear about your experience, your journey, your decision making, and all of that to come here. Let's have lunch. So we had lunch. Only then did I find out that her sister lives here, and her sister and her husband. So I said, oh, how fun. Oh my gosh, I can imagine. I mean, my sister's one of my best friends. So I thought, oh, it must be so fun. You've got a built-in friend. And she was like, not all the time. Like
yeah.
we enjoy each other in small doses. So it's not as if, we're coming back together and seeing each other all the time, but there are multiple examples of the siblings here. And it's great to see them. And it is really nice to have that support system close by.
It is, no question. And to me, it's so unusual. And I remember that from when I visited that. I think at the time there were residents who lived there from, it seemed like, I can't remember, it was a long time ago, probably 10 years, but it was like, it seemed like 26 different states or something like that. It was really a big number.
Well, it's up to 46 now. So we probably have 25% of our residents come from the Lancaster County area. And then about another 25% come from the rest of Pennsylvania or the tri-state area here. And then 50% are from 46 states. So that makes marketing challenging. And that's why that word of mouth is so important.
So besides moving there because they've got family members, that can't be true for everybody. Why else are people moving?
Sometimes it's not a family member right here, but it is, I have a family member on the Eastern Seaboard. And so I have 2 and I want to be somewhere in between. And then, Willow Valley Communities was ranked number 2 in the Newsweek, top CCRCs. And I will tell you that brings quite a few people here because the planners who consult that list and then make a spreadsheet and then set about visiting all around the country to choose a place. And fortunately, many of them choose Willow Valley Communities.
Great. So if I want to move in, are there openings?
Well, the wait list is pretty lengthy, so you're going to want to get on to reserve your ability to move in when it becomes available.
That's a great position to be in. So, Lisa, we're about out of time. Any sort of last words of wisdom for us?
Well, thanks for having me. It's just like I learned in consulting career chapters many, many years ago. You've seen one CCRC, you've seen one CCRC, right? So, and there's a right place for everyone. I'm thrilled that this is the right place for so many people, and I can I can easily see why. And I'm grateful that I've inherited this legacy to shepherd forward, and excited to have you back if you ever want to pay a visit and see what's happened since you were last here.
I would love to do that. I was pretty young in my media career when I was doing that, so I'm sure I'd learn a lot more things and would love to spend more time there. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me, Jada. Thank you so much for producing in the background, and Lisa, just stay on for a couple minutes after we are off the air to debrief.
Sure thing.